Hey guys, I'm Spencer Smith, SVP of Consultant Development here at ParetoHealth, and I'm with
Peter Dorn. I run the Texas and Oklahoma pod for Captive here at Pareto.
Awesome. Well, so Pete, right now we're going to do frequently asked questions that employers have when joining a captive. So the first category we're going to focus on is the impact to the employee. So let's say I'm an employer that decides to join ParetoHealth Captive. Does my employee know that they're in a captive?
Absolutely not. They won't know whether they're fully insured or self-funded or self-funding in the captive. The important thing to know is that each employee will have, each employer will choose a great network, and that employee will get that great network ID card with that network. Now, what will happen is they will get additional reach out from some of the different vendorships that are available through the Pareto program. For example, KISS card, right, or cancer care, or any of the other 8 to 10 programs that we offer for cost management. There will be a fair amount of education that needs to be done up front for the employees and the broker. But then, once they start to get used to the system and they start to get used to the reach out, they can use this vendorship with confidence, knowing that potentially they don't have to come out of pocket, zero copay, zero deductible for some of the things that they're securing care for through.
So with that education, then, if I'm an employer, is it my responsibility to do the education, or can we rely on the vendors? Who's ultimately going to be educating my employees?
So I think it's a dual part education. Obviously, Pareto will be available for support, but your consultant is the one that's familiar with these programs, and the education starts at open enrollment and continues throughout the year for not only this one program, but all the other programs that you're going to employ as part of that ICM platform.
And now you said that I'll still have a network, right? So I even potentially could have the same network that I have today when I'm fully insured or self-funded. So there's not necessarily going to be big disruption with my employees or anything like that.
No, your employees, the employees of our members, do not have to use any of the ICM platforms that we have available.
Okay.
They can go and secure care just like they use their ID card today if they were fully insured. But in this case, again, they're going to receive eventually some additional outreach and support for the different vendorships that we have.
Perfect. Okay, Pete, now we're going to talk about capital. We hear this a lot when within a captive. I've got to post capital. I need to put forth capital. So when I say capital, what does that mean in context of a captive?
Sure. Think about capital. Think about capital, and think about any insurance company in the country that has to post reserves. You heard the term collateral. We use capital, and these reserves are just in case. They're a rainy day fund, just in case we run out of money in that claims bucket, right? That we have to replenish that claims bucket at the end of the year. So we post capital for all of our employers. Remember, this is a member-owned program. Okay. If you're fully insured, it's going to be anywhere between 3 and 4% of your fully insured premium, right? If you're self-funded, it's going to be 10% of your current stop-loss premium, spec and ag premium. Okay, we take that money and we put that in a small bucket off to the side. Let's just call this a small coffee cup off to the side. Okay, we put that capital there again just in case we have to replenish that claim bucket at the end of the year. Okay, we invest this for you. So again, this is a asset on your client's balance sheet. This is not an expense, but we invest the capital for you along with all the other capital that all the other members are bringing into the program. Okay. You will get this investment capital. You'll see the capital investment on what we call a capital notion report. Again, full transparency with everything here at Pareto.
Well, you use the word capital and collateral. Draw the distinction for me. Why is it capital versus collateral? What's the difference?
I think they're synonymous, right? Capital and collateral are synonymous. Collateral is a general term used in most property and casualty captives, right? Reserves are what insurance companies use, the terminology there. In all three cases, I think they're used for the same thing.
Okay. And then so you mentioned that it's an asset on the balance sheet and should be treated like that. So there is an opportunity for investment income, correct? And then that coffee cup that's set aside at the end of the year. What happens if there's money left in that coffee cup?
So again, that coffee cup, they'll have to post the capital in year 1. Okay. They'll also have to post capital in year 2.
Okay.
Because halfway through year 2, because of the run-out provision in the first year contract, that first year capital will get freed up, okay? This is our client's money, okay, and they choose to do what they want with this money. Most employers choose to roll year 1 capital into year 3, right, and so forth. So roll year 2 capital into year 4. So again, as an employer coming into the program, they'll have to post capital for the first 2 years, but God willing, not have to post any more capital after that.
Sure. And then so what happens should a member, for whatever reason, decide to leave? do they get to keep that capital if there's money left over?
100%. And this is
Okay.
a distinguishing thing with Pareto rather than other programs where they're going to keep that capital. But employers, upon leaving our program, if you'd like to go back to fully insured, you get a full run-out contract, number one. All the data you've collected inside of Pareto, you can take with you. And of course, you take your funds, your capital funds on the way out. Again, we don't want anybody to stay within our program that doesn't want to be here. And they could do that. This is a one-year commitment. They could do that after the first year.
Okay, perfect.
One final point,
Yes, please.
I might add. People ask me about the stability of the Pareto captive and what does that look like. Just to guess, quick estimation, how much capital do we collectively have in that small coffee cup across all of our programs? You want to venture a guess?
I actually think I know the answer, but I'll leave it up to you to tell.
Well, it's north of a couple $100 million,
Yeah.
right? And so just what that means is we'd have to burn through a couple $100 million worth of capital, right, for this program to go upside down. So people ask me about the stability of Pareto. Since inception, how much capital have we built up? That's your answer.
Cool, very cool. Well, actually, you tricked me one more question. I want to ask this follow-up
Sure.
question. Why do I need capital versus maybe just building up more premium to be set aside for those claims?
Yeah, so it's two separate buckets. We have the premium bucket to pay specific and aggregate premium. Okay, that's part of your claim fund.
Okay.
Right, that money goes in. That risk-sharing element in the captive, along with all the other employers. Capital, a separate line item altogether. Right. So again, two separate pots for two separate things.
Very cool. All right, so this is probably a question that members are going to have. I'm interested in joining the Pareto captive, but can I be kicked out? Is there a possibility that I'll be made to leave for some reason or another? How does that work?
Maybe the most frequently asked question we
Is
get
it?
when we talk to employers, can somebody get booted out of the risk pool? And the answer is simply yes. But it's a lot more complicated than that. Okay. First, we have several notices from the consultant, from Pareto to the consultant, from the consultant to the client. Okay. Most of the time, we have large claimant frequency, but we have the ability to manage these claims, but the employer not engaging in those vendorships to help us manage the captive. Right.
Okay.
As the captive manager, Pareto is our duty and concern to look out at the performance of all the members. So if you have a member that won't engage in potentially a program that will save the captive and themselves additional funds, additional claim funds, then we have to put them on notice. And if that continues to persist, after several notices, after working with the consultant, and that behavior continues to exist, then and only then can the board vote that member out.
So it's a multi-year process, right, where they're effectively not doing anything to manage claims. They're not using the ICM platform, right? They're running poorly and they're not engaged. Is that so? It has to be multiple hoops after multiple years before they would have just be booted.
That's
out
correct,
of the
and I
account.
want to be clear. Just because you have large claimant activity,
Right.
If you're engaged in the ICM platform or behaviors to help the captive curtail that claim, that does not mean that you're in a position to get booted out of the captive.
Yeah, so I think that would probably be a common fear, right, or concern of an employer is, what if I just run poorly? Do you kick out the bottom 5% or the bottom 10%? So
No,
the
we're
answer
not.
is no.
This is the risk business, right?
Yeah.
And you could argue that the captive benefits those employers that actually have that claim progression. Those that are, specifically getting that 30% increase on stop loss, those are the members that are benefiting the most from the captive structure.
Well, so back to that question earlier, we had the question of capital, but now in the situation where somebody does get kicked out, do they still get to keep capital if there's money for them left over in their bucket,
So
or
no,
no?
in that circumstance, no, they would forfeit,
Okay,
they would forfeit the capital. And then all the vendorships that they would be getting as part of the captive, they would have to go back to paying full retail price for.
Sure.
There are benefits in the captive. We take those away. Should you be in a situation where you actually.
Well,
need the
and
captive.
being a member-owned captive, the whole point is they're participating with everybody else and actively trying to manage their plan, right? Otherwise, there's no reason they should be in the captive in the first place.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, Pete, let's talk integrated cost management, or the ICM platform. These are the things that help control costs. Like, it's one thing to do the insurance side through the stop loss policy. The other side of the equation is long-term trying to control costs. So what is the ICM platform, and do I have to do everything in it in the first year?
Think about one of the two elements that Pareto, one of the two main missions here at Pareto. Obviously, the first one is to reduce that risk and volatility of insurance. We do that by giving all employers that wonderful stop loss policy, best-in-class stop loss policy. But again, once we have that in place, we immediately pivot and move on to mission number two, ultimately, and that's lower the unit cost of healthcare, right? How do we do that? Well, one of the great things about the captive, and again, using the buying power of the captive, 850,000 employees and growing, okay? getting all the things that we talked about that a Fortune 25 company would get, okay? Part of that is the ICM platform, this wonderful package of best-in-class vendors that we employ, right? And then, the ability for those vendors to, again, start working on lowering that unit cost of healthcare for our employers.
Well, and imagine when an employer sees that all for the first time, this suite of services or solutions, they might go, oh, that seems like a lot. So does an employer have to engage with every single one of them in year one?
It's a great question.
Okay.
And a lot of HR directors, upon seeing our presentation for the first time, are getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Wow, look at all the work that I now have to do that I didn't have to do before. Okay, and I want to hit the pause button on that and understand that most employers that come into our program are going to select 1, 2, or maybe 3 vendors that make the most sense for their population. And think about this too. If you're coming from fully insured and you don't have data, now we have data in a self-funded plan, right? So we understand that you're, how you're spending your money as an employer. After we view those claims data, that claims data, we can then employ one of the vendors that will help that employer lower that unit cost of healthcare.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily everything, right? So maybe give me an example of what's a common thing that's done in year one.
So let's say they have a couple cancers on the plan, right?
Okay.
Obviously, we have a wonderful partnership with Cancer Care, right? So that's one of the early vendors that we would employ, right, using the Center of Excellence for Cancer Care to help manage that claim, okay? That's just an example. If they have, for whatever reason, a lot of orthopedic injuries, scans and x-rays and those sort of things. We actually have a vendor, KissCard, that makes perfect sense to help curtail some of those claims with a direct contract. Also, zero copay, zero out of pocket. So I think that's one of the first vendors that is going to have an immediate impact on some of the employees. Having the ability to take their kid to the orthopedic to get stitches or to get a scan or x-ray without having to come out of pocket. So again, we'll look at the claims data and then decide which one of the vendors makes the most sense out of the gate.
Well, and even some, they might already have something like this today, a PBM, right? If they're self-funded, they might have a PBM today, or it's built in, the pharmacy's built into their fully insured plan. Do you think addressing the PBM with one of our PRXC partners would make sense in year one as well?
100%. I think that's low-hanging fruit. That's where employers see the most immediate impact, right? Especially when we move the pharmacy from a carrier-run pharmacy plan, right? That's where we see the most savings. But the employer is not giving up much in the way of flexibility as far as they'll choose their own plan designs, right? These will be the same pharmacies that their employees use today, right? They'll make decisions on what formulary drugs they want to cover, right? What type of plan designs do they want that makes the most sense for their employees? So still get a better contract language inside of the pharmacy without giving up the pharmacies that they go to or the drugs that their employees
Well,
are
I think the
taking.
point is right, they have the opportunity to sort of pick and choose which vendors that make sense for them this year, but it doesn't mean they can't continually evolve and grow and add on things over the course of 3 years or 5 years. So does Pareto help guide them or give them sort of suggestions of what to address the next year and the next year? Is it a continual
we have
thing?
what are called playbooks. It's
Okay.
one of the ways that we help manage claims, right? Looking through the claims data that comes through Springbuk. By the way, all employers in the captive get Springbuk, which is a great data analytic tool that summarizes their performance on a monthly basis, right? So they can see how they're spending their money for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay, we evaluate that data at Pareto and often issue playbooks throughout the course of the year. So this is not something that you're going to set and then go through a renewal process. Pareto will come to the consultant and show the consultant and the client ultimately ways that they can save money throughout the year.
Okay. So we got to crawl, walk, run, right? So we have the ability to evolve over time. But do you ever get the question of, well, why don't I just go get these things on my own? I mean, I'm sure sometimes employers are thinking it do I need to go through Pareto? Why should I go through Pareto to get these things rather than go direct? What would be your response to that?
Well, they certainly could do whatever they want to do, right? But most
Sure.
employers are not going to select that. They're going to choose to use the ICM platform through Pareto because, again, they're getting the economies of scale, right? We are employing these vendors based on 850,000 employees in the captive and growing, okay? Probably 1 million members by the end of 2023. So again, when we negotiate with the vendors and get the pricing for the vendors, we are doing that based upon a much larger group and not a smaller population, okay? The entire ICM platform for an employer that's 150 lives costs $2. And there's a tremendous amount of ROI there in the fact that vendorship that we offer can be anywhere between $35 to $45 worth of vendorships that we're offering
Per
for $2.
employee per month,
Per
right?
employee
Yeah,
per
yeah.
month that we're offering for $2.
Okay, that's pretty significant. And then so you already kind of addressed the cost, right? But so if I'm an employer, do I pick and choose, like if there's some add-ons, some other things that I might choose ad hoc to pull into the equation, or is there a bundle that's given to me automatically for that $2 fee?
No, they can choose, they can pick and choose the different vendorships. And I just want to add this, our consulting partners also have vendors that they feel great
Sure.
about and they feel comfortable with, right? And so I think the best partnerships at Pareto are going to use elements of our ICM platform, but also have the consultants employ parts of their cost containment initiatives. Okay, I think the package between great consultants and Pareto are going to help manage those claims and give clients the best performance they can get inside the captive.
Sure, so these things aren't required, they're simply optional, but they're really great options if you choose to use
100%.
them. Yeah.
I just want to add one further thought. And when a member goes to a member meeting, which I think we'll talk about next, they're going to look at some of these other vendorships that are available to them. Okay, so again, there's constant education for the members as they go throughout the year, and I think seeing that at the member meeting and talking to other employers who they're taking risks with on what works for their employees, right, is a valuable proposition here at the captive.
Okay, Pete, let's talk about member meetings. I think one of the reasons why an employer might decide to join the captive, other than all the things we've just discussed, is the ability to share best practices with members. So if I am a member of the ParetoHealth captive, what are those member meetings like? What should I expect from attending one of those?
First, I think one of the more valuable pieces of Pareto is the fact that it's a member-owned captive. Okay, this is a captive that's not built by an insurance company. It's not built by a reinsurer. It's not owned by a broker. Pareto is the captive manager, but we set the members up to succeed. Okay, first at the core, that's what exists. Okay, as a participating member in the captive, you want to meet the other members that you're taking risk with. Okay, you want to meet them because again, you want to hear about their initiatives, which are the same as yours. Right, you're like-minded employer groups. Okay, I also mentioned the vendors previously. The member meetings are a great way to get educated, take that additional step in the captive, the next step in your captive progression. Remember, employers that are buying the captive aren't buying insurance over a 12-month period, right? They're buying insurance over a 4 or 5 year period, right? So again, go to the member meetings, get educated, meet the people you're taking risk with, learn from the other employers.
Sure.
More importantly, as a member, if you're actively involved and you want to have an impact, you have the ability to get a board seat, right? Board members are making active decisions as it pertains to risk, as it pertains to capital, as it pertains to vendorships in the program. So again, having the ability to actually make an impact from a decision maker process is a wonderful thing here at Pareto.
Now, are these required? I mean, am I required to go? Am I obligated to go? Is it optional? What's the stance of Pareto
Well,
on
just
that?
like everything else at Pareto, we're not requiring it, but we strongly recommend that you get to a member meeting because again, you get credit off your renewal as part of that participation at the member meeting.
Okay.
But I think to really maximize the captive experience, right, to really understand what your peers are doing as you progress in healthcare. And by the way, healthcare always changing, different vendors this year than last year, always progressing in that spot. You want to get to the member meetings to stay on top of your healthcare and make those necessary changes.
Well, I think you kind of answered my next question, but I know is one that comes up is, well, that sounds great, but if I go 1 year, why would I need to keep going, right? If I got all the things in the first year, why do I need to go 7 years from now?
Yeah, first you're gonna have a great time. Because Pareto does member meetings in great spots, and that's wonderful. But again, the second is your healthcare is always changing, right? The different types of claims that we see, the different types of vendors that we try to employ. By the way, always looking at the captive structure. Does the captive structure that we have today, can it benefit from changes going forward? You want to be a part of that discussion. You want to vote, by the way, the board members in, right? If you have somebody that you know and like, that's influential, has been a member of the captive and done the right thing via the captive and for themselves, you want to have the ability to vote that person onto the board. That person might be you. So again, all things that you don't want to miss, you want to make sure, put that on the calendar far out. Absolutely strongly recommend that you attend all these member meetings.
Well, Pete, I know you've probably gotten this question before. Why doesn't ParetoHealth do member meetings in the Cayman Islands? Because I've heard about other captives doing that. Why are yours onshore for the most part?
Well, all of our captives are based in Tennessee, okay? For the simple fact that there's really no tax advantage or any other financial advantage for captives to be offshore anymore. The states have kind of leveled that playing field, okay? I also think that all the businesses that we write into our program are domestic businesses. And I think like the insurance company should be a domestic captive, and I feel strongly about that. Not only that, Nashville's a great place to be. They're a wonderful host. It's a beautiful town. But we also, again, have member meetings throughout the
Phoenix,
country
yeah,
and other wonderful spots.
Yeah, I think there's this lure for the exoticness of the Caymans, right? But then you effectively said that realistically there's no advantages from a tax perspective. You know, it might sound fun to go to a Cayman, but we also have a responsibility to be.
By the way, we've taken 2 member meetings the last couple of years offshore,
Okay.
the Bahamas and St. Thomas. So we will go offshore occasionally, but not for the financial reasons for the captain to be domiciled
Okay.
there.
Well, and so other than that, like, am I, as an employer, am I funding my trips? How many people get to go with me? Like, tell me some of the logistical questions that might come up.
Yeah, so again, you're going to pay your own way to get there. Obviously, we are going to negotiate all the things that you do when you get there. We have some great events. You mentioned Nashville. We have a wonderful singer-songwriter tradition that we do there. But again, you're going to want to pay for this in the sense that you're going to want to be there, because I think you're going to get a tremendous amount out of the meeting. Again, meeting the other members, I think it's a part of that education piece that you want to be a part of. And so, yes, you'll have to pay out of your own pocket to get there.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.